colleagues, I see many familiar faces among you. It's good to see you this afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I will build on what Paul has explained about the what, the why, and the how of teacher inquiry and classroom inquiry in order to build up a case as to why all of us as English language teachers should be involved and undertake inquiry in our classrooms. Now, I will be highlighting three cases, right, of teacher inquiry that has been undertaken, that three groups of teachers have undertaken at the primary and secondary levels. And for each of these cases, I will point out exactly what these teachers say, not so much about the how, but the value of being part of that inquiry, of undertaking that inquiry, and how that makes a difference to their own learning and how it makes a difference to student learning. So I also like to highlight that for each of these three cases, there has been a master teacher supporting and enabling the teacher leaders and teachers in the process of teacher inquiry. The next, in the first case that I'd like to highlight to you, features Miss Evelyn Yeo. Evelyn embarked on her inquiry in 2019 to 2020, and she was supported by our colleague, Dr. Priska Chong, who is master teacher, I'm sure you know, supporting schools in the North Zone. Now, Evelyn at that point was a lead teacher of English language now in Innova Primary School. Now she has just taken on a new appointment as MTT High Ability for High Ability Learners. Now, what did Evelyn embark on in her inquiry, and where did it all begin? It all began with her curiosity. And that curiosity was really based on her own classroom of high progress learners. Now, what was she curious about? She was really curious to find out, to explore ways in order to more effectively engage her students. And what she then told Priska about it, and there began their inquiry together in collaboration with another person called Mr. Chiu Ka-lung, who is lecturer at the National Institute of Education. And both Priska and Mr. Chiu supported Evelyn in her inquiry, which started with her curiosity, to examine the impact of enabling her high progress learners at the P4 level in order to see a bigger picture, right, in relation to what they're learning, because high progress learners need to have a roadmap ahead of them. And with that, how their understanding could be further enhanced, right, for the learning of English language. Now, what does Evelyn have to say about the value of engaging in classroom inquiry? And I quote from her. She said this, and you can find all of these write-ups, right, in our Classroom Inquiry Digest. I'll give you the link later. She said, Evelyn, it provided me with the opportunity to deepen my knowledge about teaching high progress learners. It also provided me with the experience of making informed decisions about remodeling my school-based English language program based on the data and the evidence that I collected. Although the inquiry conducted was with a small sample size, the findings and learning from this inquiry have been useful to guide me in the remodeling of my program so that when my students go up to primary 5, I can better cater to their needs. Now, think back to what Paul said earlier. Paul quoted Professor Helen Timperley. And what did Professor Helen Timperley say? She says that teachers who participate in inquiry get to build the relevant knowledge and skills. Now, Evelyn said exactly that. Case number 2. I'd go to highlight to you that this is at the secondary level. We move from the primary in Evelyn's classroom to the secondary. Now, similarly, in the second case of two teachers, right, at the secondary level in St. Patrick's School. Now, our colleague, Mrs. Joy Lee, master teacher English language, supported these two secondary one teachers, Ruth and Xiong Hua, in their classroom inquiry. Now, what was it focused on? It was focused on using technology, tapping the affordance of video technology so that these two teachers could self-analyze the video recorded lessons, right? And that was guided by a self-reflection tool in order that they could obtain useful evidence to inform them of ways to improve their pedagogical practices. Now, evident from what Ruth and Xiong Hua have said is this, that their involvement in classroom inquiry made a difference, not just to their own learning, but this time it was to their beliefs and their attitudes, and it helped to reframe them in terms of their own professional perspectives. So notice here, Evelyn said that it helped her grow in terms of her knowledge. In the case of Ruth and Xiong Hua, they said it helped them reframe their perspectives and shift their beliefs and attitudes towards using videos to inform them about their practices. Now, that's exactly what Professor Helen Timperley also said in her research evidence, right? Now, let me fill you in on the difference in the beliefs, attitudes, and perspectives that Ruth and Xiong Hua said that they noticed happen in them. At the beginning of the inquiry, Xiong Hua said, I'm very uncomfortable. He told Joy this. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of being video recorded, right? Now, however, he still embarked on it, and he felt over some weeks, right? He felt that the inquiry itself was an opportunity for him to witness how technology could support teacher reflection and teacher growth. And some weeks later, he said, oh, I become far more neutral to this idea of using this video as a tool. And this change in attitude was actually a good starting point for his own self-growth as a professional. What about Ruth? For Ruth, it was a different way for her of mentoring. Why? Because she was actually a mentor to Xiong Hua. Why? Because she let Xiong Hua shadow her in the classroom and do video recording of her lesson, as you see it here in this photograph. Now, this was followed by her relating to him her experiences of using this tool, right, during the pre and post interventions phases of the inquiry. And over the weeks, she said, actually, she herself began to recognize that video recording was actually so helpful in providing that data to recall from or to reflect on. So that is case number 2. Case number 3 is in the context of Hwa Chong Institution. And this was where, this was a context that I had supported this group of 5 teachers, led by a teacher leader in the middle, Mrs. Yashila Vetri. Now, these teachers were teaching students in the secondary section of Hwa Chong. Now, they have foreign students, namely PRC students, who actually had a lot of difficulty reading, especially critical reading. And so they felt themselves the need to build their own knowledge and understanding of what critical reading involves. And so they made this area of professional learning the focus of the inquiry. Now, what was the inquiry question? The inquiry questions were these. 1, what learner strategies do students employ in reading for understanding and response? 2nd, how does the teacher intervention impact learner strategies for text understanding and response? Again, you can read the articles in our Classroom Inquiry Digest. Now, what did the teachers have to say about their experience in collaborating on this inquiry? Number one, they said, we became better, far better at identifying and articulating our students' specific strengths and areas for improvement in reading. Second, we could co-relate the learner strategies that our students needed with the types of comprehension questions to ask. And third, we also became far better at differentiating our teaching to meet the different needs of our students. So colleagues, I rest my case. For all the three cases that you've just heard me walk you through, all the teachers, what they've said, right, resonate with Professor Timperley's ideas gathered from her research evidence, which is that teacher inquiry promotes the learning of teachers and helps in building their professional knowledge, skills, as well as dispositions, as I have explained to you, which ultimately have brought about improved student learning. So colleagues, let us always remember this, that at the heart of everything we do as a teacher, it should always be our students in mind. So with that, this is the URL for accessing all these articles that I've referred to. And if you wish to also dip into the literature by Professor Helen Timperley, here they are that Paul has referred to.